Welcome to episode 22 of Full Court Magic. I am Don Strouble, your host and the Orlando Magic beat writer for Roundtable Sports. And as always, this episode is powered by Roundtable Sports. This episode is going to have more of a solemn tone. Obviously, the season is over. Last time I came to you guys for a full episode, the Magic were in the driver's seat against the Detroit Pistons in their first round playoff series. And since that time, have suffered an epic collapse, fired head coach Jamahl Mosley, and now begin into a summer of, at least so far, unknowns. And we're going to cover those things today. And as you can see, the title of this episode is End of the Road. Sometimes I struggle with these titles, think, oh, is that too corny? Is that, too much of a play on words, this, that, the other? This was the best way I could describe this, and it came to me fairly easily because that's where we're at. That is where we're at. And so, let's talk about it. So the Magic decided to dismiss head coach Jamahl Mosley, ending his tenure with the team after 5 seasons. He was hired in July 2021. And his tenure comes to an end nearly 5 calendar years later after falling in Game 7 to the Detroit Pistons on Sunday. This was, as you all know, a series that the Magic had in the palm of their hands and just could not find a way to get it done, specifically after Franz Wagner got hurt in the Game 4 win. And that was the only time the Magic were able to get it done without him on the floor. He suffered that right calf strain. Originally thought that it was just some right calf tightness, but the MRI that he received the day after Game 4 concluded that it was a right calf strain. So, given everything Franz has dealt with this season, the last thing the Magic were going to do was risk having a calf strain turn into an Achilles tear, because we've seen that far too often, and it wasn't worth the risk. But without him, the Magic just couldn't quite get it done. I'm not saying he's the whole reason for their success, but he's a steadying presence on offense. When they needed him to be, he guarded Cade Cunningham at an elite level and really made things hard for him, in those first 4 games. But, you know, uh, without him on the floor, it was just too much of the onus fell on Paolo Banchero, Desmond Bane, and I guess you could say Jalen Suggs. And Jalen was really offensively really, really bad in this series, and we'll get to that too. But nothing is more painful for you guys, the Magic faithful out there, than the Game 6 collapse. That was a game that, you talk about the series being in the palm of the Magic's hand. That was the game that they had the Pistons on the ropes, a 24-point lead. Ended up losing the game by 14 points after scoring just 19 points in the second half. And you guys have seen all the stats. The team went 45 minutes of real time without making a shot, 23 straight missed shots. And it was just, I've never seen, and I've been in the building this season for some tough losses. I've never seen the air sucked out of the Kia Center quite like that. And it was almost like a foregone conclusion that the series was over, right? And that was something that Anthony Black told colleagues of mine. I believe it was after Game 7 that the series was lost when they blew that lead. And so, the Magic, they go to Detroit. Paolo Banchero starts out hot. After, he was one of the abysmal contributors, if you can even call it contributions, in Game 6 when he went 4 for 20 from the field for 17 points. And sadly enough, he was the leading scorer in that game. Turned around, and he's played in 2 Game 7s now, and in both of those, the one against Cleveland a couple years ago and the one against Detroit on Sunday, dropped 38 points, scored the Magic's first 11 points. Really looked to be in his bag and doing everything he could to will his team to victory, but it just wasn't quite enough. Not in that environment, not without Franz, not with the way, you know, the other players on the roster who touched the floor were playing. And so, the Magic fans all season, for the most part, have been calling for Jamahl Mosley's job. And now that wish has been granted. The news came out that he was dismissed on Monday morning. I filed my story immediately and had it published. Regretting that I'm just now getting on the air, but Monday was busy. And I got an email from Magic PR that President of Basketball Operations Jeff Weltman would be having a press conference to discuss the decision. And so I made my way over to Advent Health Training Center, and for 30 minutes, I listened to Jeff Weltman talk about why the organization made this choice. And I also listened to him talk ad nauseum about how things would have been different if injuries didn't happen, and I'll get to that soon as well, among some other topics. So, you know, uh, the Magic are now, this feels like the front office's attempt at the second stage of trying to get the Magic to the next level. The first attempt was acquiring Desmond Bane, and the stock and the haul that they put forth to acquire him last summer. The second phase is now moving off of Jamahl Mosley, and for the record, I am in favor of this move. I think that Coach Mosley is a great guy. Let me preface with that first and foremost. He was always really, really cool to us, really personable. You could always count on a fist bump from him after a pregame media session. He provided good answers. He didn't feel like someone who was closed off, right? And he did a lot of great things for the community around Orlando during his time here. And let's not forget, I mean, he helped raise this team from the gutter of the Eastern Conference, the depths of the standings, and being a lottery team. And in his last 3 seasons, the Magic have made the playoffs in all 3 of those years, despite the injuries, despite lack of offense and things of that nature. So the culture of defense and hard work and tenacity that he was able to instill helped this Magic team get to a point where playing in middle to late April and possibly even May. I mean, they got to May 3rd this year. He got them to that point. He helped get them to that point, but now it's time for the Magic to try to play into late May and into June. And the expectations heading into this season, given the state of the Eastern Conference, were that the Magic would be one of the top teams in the East, and they would be positioned to play into late May, or best case scenario, maybe even June. That clearly didn't happen. So now they look for a new voice, and we'll talk about some of, or mainly the one seemingly favorite candidate for this job. But I want to talk about Jeff Weltman for a second. I just feel like, at some point, the DeVos family is also going to have to make a decision when it comes to Jeff Weltman. This is an executive that sometimes makes the right move and does okay, and other times just is a victim of his own paralysis, a victim of his own complacency, it seems like. And he really, really likes to lean on the injury excuse. And I'm not saying that it doesn't have merit, but he talked at length during that press conference on Monday after Coach Mosley was let go about how the team was affected by injuries and how elite this team is when players aren't injured, and like, okay, fine, right? But with the exception of Franz and Jalen, I believe only played 52 games, but Paolo played 72. Wendell Carter Jr. played 78, and Desmond Bain played all 82, plus the playing games, plus all of the playoff games. So it's clearly not all about injury. And, I'm sure that's part of this firing is that Jamahl Mosley struggled with situational awareness, in-game execution, things of those nature. He had hit his ceiling, um, as the head coach of this franchise. And, but to hear Weltman, because it was the same thing, he parroted this same talking point after the trade deadline when the only thing that the Magic did was move off of Tyus Jones, and they had to tie 2 future second round picks to Jones to ship him off to the Charlotte Hornets. So sacrificing, you know, future picks for what ended up being a dud on Weltman's part. I mean, it was a 1-year, $7 million deal for Jones, and he was, quite frankly, abysmal during his time with the Magic. And it just that's only one of these situations. You know what I mean? And so I look at the Tyus Jones situation. I look at giving Jonathan Isaac 84 million over 5 years and the type of cap hit that this team took for Isaac to play 52 games, shoot 42.2% from the field, 18.4% from three, and average 2.6 points per game. Right? He's making over $14 million a year. That was another Jeff Weltman move. And if you go down the list, like the Bane move was good, right? He's had some good moves. The drafting of Franz, drafting of Paulo, those are solid moves. I don't want to admonish this guy and tear him apart entirely, but there is, I would argue, just as much frustration within the fan base regarding Jeff Weltman as there was with Jamahl Mosley. And Jeff Weltman is the one who, according to Josh Robbins of The Athletic, this was reported on Monday before the news that Mosley was fired, Weltman quietly received an extension from the organization in the middle of the season around December when the Magic were making that deep run into the NBA Cup. Now, obviously, things were looking a lot better then for this team, but that was also around the time that Franz suffered that high ankle sprain. And, you know, really that left ankle is what plagued the rest of his season. And so, there was just an inability or maybe a lack of desire to do anything at the trade deadline, just kind of operating timidly. Like, yeah, moved off of Tyus Jones, signed Javon Carter, and Javon Carter was a good vet, I think, in a lot of ways. I think that his voice in the locker room helped transform the Magic season partially after the All-Star break, when they went on, that run, especially I believe it was that 7-game win streak from early to mid-March, but then it never lasted. I mean, disaster struck after that, that, dropped the Magic all the way to the 8th seed. I mean, their season was on life support way back in the play-in. Like, for all things considered, like, it is a surprise that this team had a playoff series and was on the cusp of knocking off the top-seeded Pistons, because this is a team that if they didn't beat the Charlotte Hornets in that 8-9 game, season's over. Like, it could have been over for weeks by now, but they were able to get through that, and they looked like they had transformed. But ultimately, it didn't turn out the way that the Magic faithful were hoping for, and I really feel bad for these fans because I know, especially for the ones that were old enough to see it, or anyone has internet, they can go back and look. Even the younger fans, the shades of 2003, that this series had. I mean, Magic were the 8th seed then, going against the top seeded Pistons, were up 3-1, blew the series. And 23 years later, you get the same result, just different personnel on the floor. And yeah, and this team has a lot that needs to be taken care of. Now, Weltman said he didn't really seem to have a specific preference when it comes to a coach. He kind of gave like an array of traits that would be good, but he didn't really land on any one thing. Maybe that's just him keeping his cards close to his chest. And, who knows? But it seems like the favorite candidate, at least among the the media and what several reporters have been tweeting about and talking about, is Billy Donovan, who stepped down as the coach of the Chicago Bulls after 6 seasons at the helm there. Um, and obviously, Donovan was really, really close to taking the Magic job back in 2007 before backing out in favor of returning to his job at the University of Florida. Um, and he's a really good veteran coach that could bring some good things to this team. But this team needs more than just whatever Billy Donovan, whoever the next coach is, can provide. It was a step in the right direction to move off of Jamahl Mosley. But what else does Weltman have up his sleeve? I mean, this team is incredibly limited in terms of its cap space after acquiring Bain and giving Paolo Banchero the rookie max extension. I mean, the team had to make some moves just to stay under the apron, the second apron. And so, not a lot of wiggle room here, but I know I kind of took shots at Jonathan Isaac earlier in this episode. And maybe I should have saved that for now, segueing into this part. But players like Jonathan Isaac, you need to find a way to get him off the roster. He's not contributing anything, and he's eating up a ton of space, a ton of cap space. His cap hit's rough, and so it's like that was a dud by Weltman. Anthony Black, sooner than later, decisions are going to have to be made about his contract. And, after a really, really nice year in which he grew exponentially on the offensive end, which was, a component of the presence of assistant coach God Shamgod, who really helped him with his handle and just, other things, other aspects of his game, but then in the playoffs, he reverted back to the same Anthony Black. He went from averaging, I believe, 15 a game through the regular season, which was big time jump back to, I think it was a little over 8 points in that playoff series, and just struggled to shoot the ball. And they really could have used him when Franz went down, at least as an offensive presence, and he just could not deliver. Right, Jalen Suggs, like. I mean, Jalen Suggs, the good news about his contract is that the amount of money declines year after year, but that was a brutal, brutal showing on the offensive end by Jalen in this playoff series. I mean, I'm going to pull up his numbers right now. I want to get the exact ones. I don't want to play a guessing game here. Yeah, so in 7 games, Suggs went 29.9% from the field, 24.1% from three. He averaged 11.1 points per game. Yeah, that's just not going to do it. There's 2 games where he made only one shot. So after that first quarter in game one, where he really helped uplift the Magic, and even then that didn't end up being his best shooting game, but he started hot and it gave the Magic momentum en route to a game one win in Little Caesars Arena. And so, what do you do with him? Right? Like, this is a team that could really benefit from having a real point guard and floor general out there. And Jalen Suggs, in a lot of ways, is the heartbeat of this team, right? Like, he is someone that is going to give it his all for better or for worse. And he is a great defensive presence. He's a really, really great on ball defender, one of the elite ones in this league. But the offense is just so egregious. And it really, really like hurt the Magic in a lot of ways. So what do you do about him? Wendell Carter Jr. after looking like a beast and punking Jalen Duren, like that's one of the things about Game 6 that stood out to me beyond the the lack of scoring, the historic lack of scoring in the second half was that Wendell Carter Jr. didn't have a rebound in that game. Like, and so it's like, what do you do with him? And I feel like these are a lot of decisions that Wiltman has to make, and I don't know how capable he is of making the right choice. Like, this is a guy that I said, very well, like my hot take was that if and I really thought it could happen once the Magic started to roll. Like I thought that there was a chance that Weltman would hold on to Coach Mosley uh, in the spirit of giving it another shot with a healthy roster, right? Like I saw it happen with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, um, in the offseason with Todd Bowles and the choice to retain Todd Bowles after the Bucks missed the playoffs and had a brutal offense, a bad defense, right? And he's supposed to be a defensive coach. And that, the similarities with Mosley, like the Magic's defense, like the defensive identity wasn't there in the same way. Now I do believe that Bowles is the worse of the two coaches, but that's neither here nor there. Like that's irrelevant. But the point is I've seen this happen with Central Florida Pro Sports before, where a team is just unwilling to move off its coach. And I feel like Jason Light, the GM of the Buccaneers, is more aggressive than Jeff Weltman. So, when the Magic are up 3-1 on the Pistons, I'm thinking Jamahl Mosley just saved his job. He was even a talking point in the national media. And so, you know, um, Weltman made the choice to let him go, but is Weltman willing to make the choice to do another significant roster shakeup this summer? Is he willing to find a way to get a true point guard in this building and a true five, a true center? Because I'm just not sure that that is Wendell Carter Jr. And if he is, then you've reached your ceiling with him. Yeah, he's a stretch five. He can shoot the three. And when he wants to, he can be dominant. I mean, that game three performance, 14 and 17, that was big time. That was big time, but you're not going to get that from him every night. And so now that Jamahl Mosley has been fired, what else is Weltman going to do? Especially that now that the DeVos family has chosen him to be their guy and have committed to him as their guy for the foreseeable future. What does he have up his sleeve to make this Magic team a contender, a true contender? Because it's 3 straight years of first round exits now. So, you've moved off of Coach Mosley. Better nail this next coaching hire, and you better nail necessary roster moves while operating a difficult cap situation. Ball is in your court, Jeff Weltman. Let's see what you got. I'm Don Strouble. Thank you for tuning in. This has been Full Court Magic. See you next time.